Hey everybody, I'm Lisa Young Sutton and you are watching the People Card video. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you all that I do have a Lenormand blog at lisaloveslenormand.com. And you can also look for me on Instagram, and feel free to send me a friend request on Facebook if you're on there, because I primarily use that for Lenormand as well. Big surprise. All right, so in this video, I'll be discussing cards number 28 and 29, traditionally called the man or gentleman for 28 and the lady or woman for card number 29. I'll also be discussing the information that their positions in a grand tableau provide, as well as how to decipher other people in our readings. We'll begin by discussing the core functions of 28 and 29. In the original system, these cards had no other meanings than representing the seeker and their significant other, okay? Their partner, love interest, or the most significant other person in their lives of that gender, the gender represented by that card. Because of all the ways we now use this deck, the partner card may represent another gender. For example, in many of my animal readings, I'm reading for a person and their pet, and the pet is represented by the dog or another animal card, leaving that partner card free, because very often these the people I'm reading for have no partner, no love interest, but that card, we need that card to represent a significant person in the animal's life, such as a vet, a trainer, or a pet sitter, and they may be of either gender. Okay? So we can use these two cards in other ways as long as we are clear with our intentions beforehand. You can establish a rule that the partner card will only represent the seeker's partner, whether they're currently together, divorced, or haven't even met yet. Or you're free to allow it to represent anyone who plays a notable role in the seeker's life with regard to the context of the reading, which is actually the way I read. Sometimes you even let the cards tell you who it is. If you're reading for somebody else, or even if you're reading for yourself, sometimes you just don't know who that card will represent, and you can just let the cards tell you. All right, so the basic guidelines are: number one, the first order of business is to be certain you only have 128 and 129 in the deck before you shuffle, unless you are pre-assigning meanings to those cards. Unless you are purposely including extra people cards and you know who they're going to represent, in that case, make sure you write it down, because I will never forget years ago when I laid an extended GT and I had all kinds of extra people cards and animal cards, and I knew who all the extra animals were, but I forgot to write down who the extra people were. And after I laid the whole thing down and started reading it, I had to scrap the whole thing. So don't let that happen to you. It was horrible. All right. Okay, so when I say make sure there's only 128 and 29, well, for you new people, just know that many of the newer decks contain extra people cards, as you can see right here. Look at these are all from the same deck. Look at all the choices they give you. Okay, so make sure you go through your deck before you start your reading, and there's only 36 cards in there, and you can also choose which people cards you want to use. I'll get into more about that in a minute. All right, so that's number one, is make sure you only have one of each in there. Okay, number two is choose a significator card for the seeker, whether it's you or someone else. Pick whichever card resonates with you. Number three is decide who the partner card will represent. When the seeker has no partner, the other card can represent a sibling, an aunt or uncle, a mother or father, son or daughter, or someone who's significant to the reading, such as a doctor, vet, lawyer, boss, or best friend, just to name a few possibilities. If you're not pre-assigning someone to this card, the context and surrounding cards will tell you who it is. And if you're still not sure who it is, I found the chord insets to be quite accurate in telling me. Right? So look at those chord insets. Speaking of which, if you look in my book, I do have a chapter on the playing card insets. Right? Whoops, that's not it. Right here. So I have a whole chapter on what they are, what you can do with them, yada yada. But I do have like the quick reference here. I just have each card and the playing card inset that's associated with it. But I also have the listing of the core inset group, and I even have them broken down into the individual suits. And that's important because you can look to see which cards have the court in sets, because those are our other people, right? And then if you go to that individual card page, you will see a description of who that person may be. Okay? All right. So that's for the partner card. Okay, number 4, in a purely descriptive reading, 28 and 29 can represent masculinity and male characteristics, as well as femininity, and female characteristics. For example, 29 can refer to womankind, femininity, female characteristics such as sensitivity, being vulnerable, caring, compassionate, humble, thoughtful, attentive, empathetic, thoughtful, intuitive, and passive. It can stand for Lady Liberty, Mother Earth, or Mother Nature. 29 can refer to, 28, can refer to mankind, masculinity, or male characteristics such as strength, assertiveness, decisiveness, industriousness, abstract thinking, rational, disciplined, self-assured, goal-oriented, logical, aggressive, macho, or dominant, father time, or man-made, right? It can represent any of those things in a descriptive reading. Since I already mentioned my blog, I have a blog on emotions and feelings, which includes dating feelings. I think it's blog number 31, so check that out. It's very popular. Okay, in a daily draw, when your card appears in your daily, the message of the other cards requires that your card be there. That's what I have always found. It's usually something to do with distance meanings or directional cues, which is why your card is showing up. If the partner card shows up in your daily, your partner or love interest will play a significant role in your day, or those other cards are telling you something about them. And if you have no partner or love interest, then this card will represent a person who will play a prominent role in your day. Now, in advice readings, when I show up in my advice readings, it's the same as for my dailies. Those other cards need my card there to highlight a directional cue or proximity meaning. And if my partner card appears, it's something about my husband. If we're using the cards descriptively in an advice reading, 29 can tell you to express your feminine side, follow your intuition, be more sensitive, or don't ignore your own needs. If the other cards suggest an end, a reduction, or a removal, then you flip that, right? And it would be telling you the opposite, like that you're being overly sensitive, don't be a doormat, or be more assertive, right? So you have to always read it with the other cards. Number 28 can ask you to express your masculine side, be more sensible, be a leader, or be more decisive. And again, if you have other cards that are suggesting an ending, a reduction, or a removal, you would flip that. And those cards could be asking you to be more sensitive, or ask you to consider if you're being too authoritarian, or are you focused too much on yourself or your ambitions, right? Okay, now in a spiritual reading, just as in an advice reading, 29 can represent female traits and characteristics rather than a person. It can also represent a female deceased relative, ancestor, or spirit guide with a message. Same for the man, right? So we can use both of these cards as well in a shadow work reading to represent our two sides, our ego and our higher selves. I've already done that, okay? All right, now in relationship readings, there's always two people. So if either card shows up, if either 28 or 29 shows up, those other cards need it to, get the message across, okay? But what I'm saying is the reading itself is already about 28 and 29. You don't need them to show up. So if they are showing up, look to see what those other cards, why those other cards need that card. Okay. In a work or business reading, if we choose to read the cards descriptively, other than people, 28 can refer to leadership, authority, ambition, the active pursuit of goals, and the ability to analyze and solve complex problems. 29 can refer to verbal skills, intuition, flexibility, and willingness to compromise, or empathy. In health readings, other than, the seeker and partner, these cards can represent a doctor, nurse, or healthcare worker. And also descriptively, 28 can represent male sexual organs and hormones, and 29 female sexual organs and hormones. Okay, so looking again at the cards on the table, I find it interesting what a lot of new deck designers are doing. Because like here we have the Rainbow Reflections deck, where we have 2 men cards, 2 woman cards, right? And the two men are looking at each other, right? Which is important for people who read directionally. They follow the gaze, right? They follow the gaze. G-A-Z-E, gaze. Okay. We have 2 women cards. And then we have these 2 they cards, which is actually why I bought this deck, because they can represent other people in the reading. And then we have like Sawyer's Lenormand. I mean, he doesn't even use, I don't know, is it a he? Could be a, I don't know. No, I think it's Jamie Sawyer. I don't even know. But anyway, they use deer, not actually people. But the cool thing about this is, again, we have 2 ladies and 2 gentlemen, but this is the only deck I've seen do this. They have 1 lady for 28, number 28, and 1 lady is number 29. Same with the men. Look, they got a gentleman 28 and a gentleman 29. So not only did they give you 2 for same-sex readings, but they actually numbered them differently, which is pretty cool. And then, the fairy tale fortune card just says that this card represents you or a significant person in the reading. And I like the traditional verse card here because it's pretty cool the way they looked at these cards back in 1799, right? Well, that's not when the verse was written, but it's following that same idea. Okay, so the gentleman is the king of cards. He brings you joy. He brings joy, or makes you grim, depending on whether he has to endure good or bad signs surrounding him. So it's just saying that the surrounding cards will describe him. All right, and the lady, the most beautiful of cards, this lady is certainly, may she bring you much luck and a life maliciousness free. Because that's what every man was looking for, a woman who would not torture him. Okay, I think that's all I want to say. Yeah. Okay. Now, looking at the plot, the original instructions sheet that accompanied every early deck, it said, the gentleman and the lady. The whole pack refers to either of these cards, depending on if the person whose fortune is being told is either number 29, a lady, or number 28, a gentleman. So the entire reading revolved around that card, right? The Seeker's card, because all the early readings were grand tableaus. There was no such thing as small spreads. That's a modern invention. More modern, anyway. Okay. The original Game of Hope. I found this interesting because if you landed on space 29, you moved ahead to the moon. And if you landed on space 28, you moved ahead to the sun. Unless you arrived at either of these spaces by landing on the heart. If the player was a female, right, and landed on the heart, she moved ahead to the space of the man. And the opposite for the male players. If they landed on the heart, they moved ahead to the space of the woman. Okay, so there's a link between the heart, the woman, and the moon, and the heart, the man, and the sun, which correlates with the feminine aspect of the moon and the masculine aspects of the sun. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, the coffee card verse, favorably placed. A man represented a merchant or spoke of good business, pleasant news, the recovery of lost items, enlisting in the military, or procuring a contract. And there was no unfavorable meaning for a man. Whereas a woman favorably placed represented joy and favor, pregnancy, wealth, in love with a virgin. I love that. Unfavorably placed represented a great deal of jealousy or in love with a widow. Come on, you gotta love this. All right, so let's look at the information we can derive from the positions of the peoples within a grand tableau. So let me stick that under your faces. And I'm using my mini Lenormand de Marseille. Okay. Is it in here? Yeah, there we go. We got it all in there. Okay. Okay. Now, when looking at the placement of the Seeker's card, falling high or low, right? Falling high up here, falling low down here, falling to the left, falling to the right, being in a corner, being in the center, or being in the bottom row or fate line, all gives us information. Okay, now just a little bit of background here. Cards above us are stronger and can be considered as influencers, while cards below us are weaker and can be considered under our influence, right? We can say that the cards above us are exerting pressure as per the law of gravity, while those below us are supporting us or more under our control, right? Cards to the left are considered weaker or inauspicious, while cards to the right are considered stronger or auspicious. Now, with this in mind, think about the Seeker's position within the spread and what it's telling you. Also, let me just mention that rows are the horizontal lines. This is what I call rows. And what I call columns are the vertical lines. All right? So that you know what I'm talking about. Now, if the Seeker's card falls within the first two rows, remember, rows, okay? That's at the top. It shows that there's much that, wait, let me start over. It says that they're on top of things and are in the influencers of much, is what I was trying to say. They're influencing a lot rather than being influenced. I'll get it out. All right, now, but if they fall in the bottom two rows, then there's much influencing them or weighing on them, right? If they're falling to the left or in the first two columns, it says that they are, facing the spread and ready to go, right? Let me just explain that one really quickly. For example, if you're laying a spread for the month ahead and you land in the first column, say, well, then you're actively moving into the month ahead, right? You're ready to face what's coming at you. Or we could say that you're showing up at the beginning of the month to actively participate in what's about to occur. Whereas if you land all the way over here in the final or far right column, we can say that the month is going to proceed kind of without you, or without you wanting to be part of it, or without you being an active participant with, you're not going to have much control over it. Right? We could say that you're not meeting up with the events or situations until the month is ending. Right? What it's saying is that there are a lot of inauspicious or weak cards. Right? Maybe there's a lot of unfinished business, a lot you're not ready to move on from or let go of, or the month will be more difficult or require more effort to get through. All right? Now, what if you land in the center four? I mean, right here, both of these are in the center four, right? Which I call the heart of the story. And I kind of look at it similarly to the center card of a box spread. Right? So this would be telling me that, like, if I landed here, it would be telling me that I'm very much a part of the heart of the story regarding the context of the reading or the time period of the spread. Basically, it's just saying that, like, I have cards equally distributed around me too, right? So you could say that everything's revolving around you, right? Now in a corner, the corners represent the predominant or prevailing theme of the reading. So if you fall in a corner, you're a major part of the story. Your actions will affect what's going on, and there's probably a lot going on for you, a lot of activity, action, change, that's all directly involving you, or that you'll be an active participant in. Okay? That's if you fall in a corner. Now, if you fall in the bottom row, or what many of you call the fate line, I don't consider this to be much different than falling in this row. Either way, you're at the bottom of the spread, which tells me that you aren't influencing anything, but are being influenced by everything. In other words, you don't have any control down here. Everything's weighing on you. All right, now let's talk about the placement of the partner card. If this card is representing the partner or love interest of the seeker, you want to see how close the two cards lie in the spread. Is your partner in your comfort zone? If not, what cards lie between you? These cards will help explain what stands between you two and why you're not closer. If the partner is below you, we see them as supporting or looking up to you, or above you, and they're standing on you or imposing their weight on you. Or we could just simply look at it from the other angle and say that you're supporting them or looking up to them. Okay, these are just slight nuances, right? You want to look at what cards are surrounding the partner. These cards will tell you what the partner is focused on, what they're dealing with. All right, they'll provide you with information about them. If the partner is yet unknown, these cards can describe them, who they are, what they look like, right? What they do for a living, all that. Okay, now we're getting to the gaze. Does the direction of their gaze matter? Does it matter what direction they are looking in? Now, have any of you noticed yet that in this deck, 28 and 29 are not looking at each other? Well, actually, 28 is looking away, and 29 is facing away from him, but actually looking at him. Okay, so does it matter which way these cards are looking? Well, to me, it doesn't. Okay, it really doesn't, and I'll tell you why. And it used to, but it doesn't anymore. Okay. Now, you'll certainly find Lenormand readers, and many of you watching may be directional readers who put great stock in directional cues, but as a traditional reader, card order, proximity, the clusters and the groupings or constellations of cards are my primary source of information. The direction of gaze is a directional cue and should be considered as a subsequent layer of the reading, as with any other directional cue if you are a traditional reader. Okay, so let me just give you a quick example. If I had a grand tableau, and this is not an actual reading, so don't get too caught up in this. I just threw these cards down, and then I just set up 28 and 29 for this example. Because here you have 28 and 29, and so many people would say, oh, well, they're not getting along because they're not looking at each other. And then other people would say they're not getting along because they don't share anything. There's no card between them, okay? But for me, the cards surrounding them, as well as the positions of the love cluster, which here we have the ring, the anchor, and the heart are all touching them, and the ring is to the right, right? And they have all great cards around them. Would I say that these two aren't getting along because they're not gazing in each other's eyes? I absolutely would not. Okay. So, you know, what this means is that you need to know if you are going to read these cards purely directionally or not. Because, I mean, honestly, pure directional readers actually read the whole spread either to the left or right, or from right to left, depending on which way the primary significator card is looking. Okay, and I'm not that reader. Okay. Now, the whole idea, let me just mention this too, the whole idea of having cards 28 and 29 looking at each other when 28 is to the left and 29 is to the right comes from houses. Okay, it comes from houses, because people who read with houses want the cards to fall in their own houses. That's where they're said to be happiest, right? So they want 28 in his house, they want 29 in her house, and they say then that they're all where they want to be, right? And they want 28 looking to the right, and they want 29 looking to the left, so that they're looking at each other if they fall in their own houses. And that's really where that whole idea comes from, because if we have them like this, well, now we could say they're facing each other, right? All right, I hope that didn't confuse all my learners. Anything that's confusing, just set it aside and deal with what makes sense to you right now, because, you know, this is all about learning in layers. You can only learn what you're ready to learn. All right, one piece at a time. Okay. Now, lastly, I'd like to share how we can recognize other people in our readings, right? I mean, there are plenty of people hidden within this deck, okay? The court insets as well as the cards themselves can all reference other people in a reading. Now, when I say the cards themselves, what do I mean by that? Well, the house can refer to those who reside under your roof or are a regular part of your personal life, right? The garden refers to others that you encounter within your surroundings, the circles you travel in. You know, oh, who are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood. In your neighborhood. I always think of that song when I see the garden card. Okay, the rider can be a visitor, a date, or someone who is courting the seeker. The ship can refer to foreigners to your country or distant relatives living abroad. The dog can be a loyal friend or a work colleague. The bear can be a supportive parent or an overbearing boss, or that hairy guy who owns your favorite restaurant. The child can be your child or children collectively, or a child that plays a significant role in your life. The bouquet can represent anyone who's offering you something pleasant. The birds can refer to a couple. The mountain can be an enemy who stands in your way. The ring pertains to a bond, union, agreement, right? Or a meeting with another. So that brings the idea of another person into the reading. And the lily, as the card of peace and harmony within our important relationships, has traditionally stood for the extended family, as these were the relationships that were most important to our daily lives and our sheer survival, right? You can think of the King of Spades inset on that lily card as the patriarch of the family, representing the family as a whole. Okay, so other than the cards themselves that I just named, we have all of the court insets to indicate people. And as a subsequent layer of my readings, I check for any court insets in my spreads. Or I can pre-assign them to represent people, in which case I'm reading those cards in two different ways. I'm reading them as the card itself, as the card itself, and then I'm also reading it as the person I chose for it to represent. All right, so basically in my readings, I'm looking for groupings of court cards, especially if they belong to the same suit, as well as any court insets that fall touching any of the cards I just mentioned that already bring an idea of other people into the reading. And those court insets can explain who they are. All right? I mean, most of you are already quite familiar with one court inset, and that is the Queen of Clubs. All right, Queen of Clubs, who falls on the snake card, which is why so many associate this card with a treacherous woman, but that is not the card's primary vibe. Okay, it's only the meaning of the court inset. Okay. And you know what? If it'll help you to understand it will help you to understand the court and set meanings in my book. If you remember that the Petit Lenormand was designed in Germany, even though it has a French name, because it was named after a deceased French fortune teller, right? But it was a deck designed in Germany, and it follows the Bavarian cartomantic system, where the acorns or clubs were the most unfortunate suit, right? Take note of the fact that the most problematic or malefic cards in this deck are assigned to clubs, right? The clubs represent difficult or unpleasant situations, people, or happenings. The spades represent the most favorable suit in this system, and you'll notice that there are no negative spades within the deck. Spades relate to comfort, security, and progress. The hearts are also a very favorable suit and represent matters of the heart, while the diamonds are the twist of fate cards, and they can go either way. They bring a lot of energy to the reading and can represent anything from great luck to great despair. Okay, I can't talk anymore. That's it for the peoples, my peoples. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, don't forget to check out my Lenormand blog at lisaloveslanormand.com, and look for me on Instagram, and feel free to send me a friend request on Facebook, which, other than occasional pictures of me riding horses or running dogs on the beach and some flower and deer pictures, it's almost all Lenormand. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!